So Jordan Peterson was asked what makes Islam so different from the other religions, and he gives quite an honest and humble answer. Let's listen to the well-articulated question and his response.
So, Dr. Peterson, I have a lot of questions that arise from your comments at the Balfour 100 event, your M103 video, your recent discussion with Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and your comments on Islam in the West in general. And in your comments, there's this common theme that one of these things is not like the other. You put the Judeo-Christian tradition on the one side and Islam on the other. Specifically, the, quote, complex problem of Islam and the, quote, as a, quote, totalizing system. And before I go further, let me state that if hypothetically a final analysis of Islam resulted in as total a denunciation as your analysis of postmodernism or neo-Marxism, I wouldn't be personally offended at all. This isn't a personal question. In your recent interview with Ayaan Hirsi Ali, she said, Western values are superior to Islamic law and Islamic values. I agree with that, basically, certainly in the context of, let's say, current global affairs. I'll skip the quotes from a Reason magazine interview, but you should read them because hers is a worldview which is very much the West versus Islam, not radical Islam, but Islam, including necessarily the military option. So my question is, at the level of psychological significance of these stories, at the level of mythology and archetype, how is Islam so different from the Judeo-Christian tradition? You know, because Adam, Eve, Havva, Satan, Shaitan, so on and so forth, everything from the fall to the flood, a lot of what you discuss in this lecture series is necessarily part of Islam as well. And in fact, I think one of the strongest criticisms of Islam is that it's perhaps pretty unoriginal. You know, tonight you said that the moral presuppositions of a culture are instantiated in its stories. I see a lot of the same stories. So current global affairs aside, I'm asking at the deepest levels, how different are these stories and the moral presuppositions?
Okay, well, that's a killer question. Well, okay, so the first thing I would say is, fundamentally, I don't know. And so part of the reason that one of the things I'm planning to do is to have a series of discussions, and plenty of people have contacted me about discussing with Ayaan Hirsi Ali, because as you know, she has powerful and serious foes. And they're not happy with her black and white distinction. And so, now I read Infidel, and I really liked that book. Like my sense was that she was a heroine. Now, what that means in relationship to Islam, that's a different story, because she came out of a totalitarian, let's say, family structure in a relatively totalitarian society. And you could make the case that there's a correspondence between that and Islam, and you could make the case that there isn't. And of course, that's the critical issue. And so, there's a couple of things that I can't wrap my head around easily in relationship to Islam. And so one is what I see as the failure to separate church from state. And that's a problem. Now, it may not be a problem as such, but it's certainly a problem in relationship to the relation between Islam and the West, because we separate church from state. Now, there's fundamentalists in the United States, Christian fundamentalists, who think that that separation is a mistake. So it's not only an idea that's rooted in Islam that those should be united. But it's definitely a problem with regards to our coexistence, because that's a fundamentally different presumption. Okay, so that's problem number one. Problem number two, for me, and again, this may be a consequence of my ignorance, which I'm trying to rectify, Muhammad was a warlord. And I don't know what to do about that fact. Like, one thing you can say about Christ, hypothetically, let's say, I'm not talking about a historical reality necessarily, although I'm not denying it either, is that of all the things he was, warlord was definitely not one of them. And I don't know what to do about that. And so I don't know how to reconcile that. And I don't know how to reconcile, like, not only was Muhammad a warlord, which I don't think is an unreasonable thing to proclaim, the expansion that he initiated was unbelievably successful. I mean, within 600 years, it was the biggest empire the world had ever seen. And it demolished Byzantine Christianity, which is something that Western people don't even know. You know, I've read thinkers who said that the West was so traumatized, culturally, let's say, by the demolition of Byzantine Christianity, that we can't even study it now. And so, I don't know if that's true, but I don't know that it's not true either. And the Buddhists were wiped out of Afghanistan, and we saw that echoed in the Taliban's destruction of those great Buddhist monuments. And so what I'm hoping is that there's a bridge. There better be a bridge. And that's why I want to have these discussions, because I'd like to understand if there's a bridge. And so lots of people have sent me people who I should talk to, who they think represent Islam far better than Ayaan Hirsi Ali. And perhaps they're correct, and hopefully I'll get an opportunity to talk to them, because I would like to know why. I would like to know if what I think is wrong. Because if it's wrong, it's important that I know it's wrong. But at the moment, I don't know it's wrong, and B, I don't see I'm not sure what it signifies. So, and I don't think anyone is sure, right? Because we have this entangling of the civilizations. You know, I've also seen parallels between the ideas that I'm presenting here and other religious traditions, Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism. It's harder for me to bridge the gap with Islam, and I'm not sure why that is. I think it has something to do with the things that I just laid out. Now, what I don't know about Islam would fill very many volumes, many of which I have sitting on my shelves at home right now, because I want to do the reading, you know, as I progress through this. But yeah.
Now, Peterson gives a very measured take on Islam, and the question he's asked focuses on one statement that Peterson has said. The moral presuppositions of a culture are instantiated in its stories. Now, I will provide a much fuller answer than Peterson did, framed with this quote in mind. I agree with the statement that the moral presuppositions of a culture are instantiated in their stories. In fact, I think it is difficult for most of us who have been born in the West to fully understand the influence that Christianity and its teachings have had on society, and I think this is mainly because of the Enlightenment period and its battle with religion. Islam contains many fragments of Judeo-Christian heritage in its scripture, but they are disjointed and incomplete and often framed as warnings of previous behaviours and transgressions. So the stories themselves do not form the moral weight they do in other Abrahamic religions. It also fundamentally does not contain the love and compassion that emanates from the Gospels. Instead, its scripture and hadith paint a picture of a fighting race of believers. This does not resonate as a peaceful system of beliefs. Instead, its Judeo-Christian stories are used to push a more darker psychology. The psychology of tribalism.
Despite its religious veneer, Islam can easily be defined and understood by one non-religious word: tribalism. This is key. The entire appeal of Muhammad's call to the Arabs of his time lay in its perfect compatibility with their tribal mores, three in particular: loyalty to one's tribe, enmity for other tribes, and raids on the latter to enrich and empower the former. For 7th century Arabs, and later tribal and pastoral peoples such as the Turks and Tatars, or Mongols, who also found natural appeal in and converted to Islam, the tribe was what humanity is to modern people. To be part of the tribe was to be treated humanely. To be outside the tribe was to be treated inhumanely, period. Muhammad reinforced this ancient dichotomy of tribalism, but by prioritizing religion over relatives. Thus, in his Constitution of Medina, which he promulgated with various non-Muslim tribes in 622, he asserted that, quote, A believer shall not slay a believer for the sake of an unbeliever, nor shall he aid an unbeliever against a believer. Moreover, all Muslims were to become, quote, friends one to the other, to the exclusion of outsiders, unquote. Hence the Ummah, which is often translated as Muslim nation, was born. Etymologically connected to the word mother, the Ummah came to signify the Islamic supertribe, a sort of universal tribe that transcends racial, national, and linguistic barriers, encompassing any and all who identify as Muslims. And its natural enemies remained everyone outside of it. Again, this is basic tribalism 1.0, though as mentioned with a religious covering or veneer. Or consider the Islamic doctrine of al-wala wal-bara, which I talk about often, which is translated as loyalty and enmity or love and hate. Muhammad preached it, and the Quran commands it. Taken together, for example, Quran 58:22 and 64 call on all Muslims to renounce and disown their non-Muslim relatives. Quote, even if they be their fathers, their sons, their brothers, or their nearest kindred. End quote. And to feel only enmity and hatred for them until they believe in Allah alone. That is, until they become Muslim. Check out those verses sometime, assuming your English Quran translation is an honest one. Anyway, those two verses, Quran 58:22 and 64, are referring to a number of Muhammad's close companions who, according to Islamic history, renounced and eventually slaughtered their own non-Muslim relatives as a show of their loyalty to Allah, Muhammad, and the believers. Examine Ibn Kathir's tafsir of Surah Al-Mujadila, verse 22. This ayah was revealed during the Badr robbery when Abu Ubaidah killed his own father. Likewise, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the first rightly guided caliph, almost killed his non-Muslim son, Abdurrahman. Similarly, Musab bin Umair is said to have slain his brother, Ubayd bin Umair, while Umar reportedly killed one of his relatives. Additionally, figures such as Hamza, Ali, and Ubaidah bin al-Harith also took the lives of close family members. At any rate, from here we come to the natural origin of jihad. Tribalistic blood ties were exchanged for religious ones. Thereby dividing the world into two mega-tribes. The believers in one tent, and their natural enemies, the non-believers, or infidels, in another. And as we've seen, the essence of tribalism is warring and preying on other tribes in order to empower your own. This dichotomized worldview is actually enshrined in Islamic law, or Sharia's mandate that Dar al-Islam, the abode of Islam, or the world of Islam, must battle Dar al-Kufr, the abode of non-Islam, in perpetuity until the former subjugates the latter. In, for example, the Encyclopedia of Islam, we read under the entry for jihad that, quote, the spread of Islam by arms is a religious duty upon Muslims in general. Jihad must continue to be done until the whole world is under the rule of Islam. Islam must completely be made over before the doctrine of jihad can be eliminated.
In other words, the doctrine of jihad, warfare on the other, is so pivotal to Islam that without it, Islam ceases to be.
This is the path of blood that we have chosen. We will complete our jihad journey to the end.
So what you see is, despite its use of previous stories and traditions, at the core Islam promotes division. It is us versus them. This is the psychology that makes Islam so toxic. It is a religion of conflict. No peace can be found in this.